happens when something as devastating as the largest natural gas leak in the history of recorded time occurs, and it occurs here among our families in Los Angeles and certainly in Porter Ranch. And so we came up with a settlement, and I'm going to give you a brief outline of it, and I think each of those speakers who will follow me will give you further details, but just roughly to give you an idea, $119 million worth of penalties and dollars that will be made available to address the actions that we had to take as governments representing the people of our city, of our county, and our state. The breakdown, we can get into that, and you have details of that as well, but much of it is in penalties against Southern California Gas. The taxpayers will not have to foot the bill for the work that was done by our legal team, because we will get reimbursement for the taxpayer expenses to litigate this matter to this conclusion. And we are able to provide resources through this settlement for activities and projects which will continue to help our area resolve the degradation of our environment as a result of whether it's methane or other environmental difficulties that we have dealing with the communities that we have here in Los Angeles. And so part of this settlement includes the monitoring of methane at the Aliso Canyon facility's fence line. So that way we have current information year to year for quite some time about the levels of methane, so we can see if there's a need to trigger action in any case that it may involve a methane leak. The settlement requires that SoCalGas create an internal safety committee which will monitor many of these activities. There will be an independent safety ombudsman who will be established to evaluate the internal safety committee's work and report to the public on safety-related issues at the Aliso Canyon facility. And we require in this settlement that Southern California Gas refrain from shifting the cost of this settlement onto ratepayers who use SoCalGas facilities and utilities. In addition, as I mentioned, there will be a number of activities undertaken to address this incident and incidents like this. A long-term health study, which I know that it was very important to the county and the city of Los Angeles to address the needs of those in Porter Ranch, was provided for, and this will be the first time we will be able to have an assessment of the direct health impacts of this leak. We will have a local monitoring network established in Porter Ranch. There will be a mitigation fund that will be available to help mitigate this type of pollution in the future. And as I said, we will provide additional environmental relief to try to help deal with the aftermath of things like this. And so I believe the three public governmental entities here involved believe that we were able to secure a settlement that works in the public's interest. But I want to make sure I'm clear. This is but one component of what must be resolved to finally close every chapter in this episode involving the historic blowout and massive leak of natural gas, methane gas at the Aliso Canyon site. With that, let me now turn to City Attorney Mike Feuer.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. When my office first filed our lawsuit against Southern California Gas 975 days ago, I had three goals. The first of those goals was that there be a judicially enforceable climate change mitigation plan. Why? Because at the early stages of this catastrophe, Southern California Gas was expressing reluctance to be legally bound to such a plan. And as the Attorney General mentioned, largest methane leak in the history of the United States, the equivalent of 440,000 cars running for a year when it comes to the impact on our environment. Methane, of course, is 30 times more dangerous when it comes to trapping greenhouse gases than is carbon dioxide. So to have a climate change mitigation plan that was enforceable by a court, key goal. Second objective, we wanted to be sure that there were strong measures put in place to prevent such an incident from ever happening again. And our third goal was to hold Southern California Gas accountable. This resolution achieves and surpasses those objectives. Let me talk a little bit about why. First, from the standpoint of residents who are in the Porter Ranch community, this resolution provides them with important health and environmental protections and the transparency that is so necessary for all our communities. Look, I get it. If I lived in the Porter Ranch neighborhood, I'd be saying, look, I've borne a lot of burdens here. We have suffered a lot in this community. And I'd be saying, too, I'm never sure that I'm getting the straight story. So what does this resolution do to address those residents and their legitimate concerns? As the Attorney General mentioned, up to $25 million for a health study to look at the long-term impacts of exposure to methane and its constituent gases that were released from the site. This was something we heard again and again was essential from the standpoint of residents in that community. It's going to be administered, by the way, by public health experts from agencies at the local, state, and federal levels to be sure it's objective and thorough. What else would I be looking at as a Porter Ranch resident? There's up to $3 million for the monitoring of air at Porter Ranch and an environmental justice community. That air monitoring is going to take place in conjunction with members of the neighborhood. Where should we be looking? What should we be seeking in that air monitoring? It's going to be a team effort because residents need information they can trust. What else? It expands the existing fence line monitoring. Let's talk in plain language about what that means. Around the periphery of Aliso Canyon, of the site, there are locations where emissions are captured, monitoring what emissions might be emerging from the site. Before this resolution, that program was to be in place for 3 years. Now it's to be in place for 8 years. Before this resolution, there was no regular public reporting on the causes and outcomes of their analysis. Where do the emissions come from? What's being done about it? Now regular reports, both to the public in a timely way and to the governmental entities that brought this lawsuit. There is going to be an internal safety committee reconvened at the gas company so that within the gas company, issues that arise when it comes to health and safety and proposals for how to make the facility more safe come to light early on. But that internal committee is going to be complemented by a first-time step in this case. There will be an ombudsman, a third party, who not only participates in these regular safety meetings, but looks at the reports that emerge from state regulators, listens to complaints from the community, prepares a written report every year as to what it finds, and importantly, will hold a town hall meeting at least once a year in the Porter Ranch community so the community can come together, listen, ask basic questions, and find out what's really been going on. These are all essential ingredients in this resolution, but there is more, because for the broader communities in this region, all of whom are affected by issues of air quality, for example, there are specific programs that will be put in place. More than $7 million for kids who live in neighborhoods whose schools are in communities where pollution is at a high level. Their schools will have air filtration devices imposed. Up to 100 schools will benefit from that. There'll be money, more than $5 million, to grapple with the issues of lead in the communities adversely affected by Exide, making sure that those houses have lead paint abated, up to 350 homes. There'll be money for electric school buses. There are almost no electric school buses in LAUSD. My kids went through kindergarten and through 12th grade at LAUSD riding in diesel buses. How different it will be when we're able to infuse money for new school buses that operate on electricity for our kids. What else? This is going to buy at least 3 breathmobiles operated throughout the county because there are individuals who have asthma who have no access to meaningful public health. They need to have a way for intervention to occur. My daughter was a softball pitcher in high school. She had asthma. I know how it felt to get the phone call when I was in the state legislature to learn that she'd been pitching and she had gotten off the mound because she couldn't breathe anymore. how important it is for our kids to have access to that kind of health care. And there are additional elements to this that are really important. It complements an increasingly robust regulatory regime that's been put in place since we filed our lawsuit in the first place. As Javier